WPIX, New York.
We are just under 2 weeks, just 2 days away when this pod drops from the start of the 10th season of the A7FL, and we couldn't be more excited. It may just be me and Cory, but we've got a special guest. It is the 3-on-1 podcast. Hey, how you doing? I'm sorry. Anemia hurts all of us. I just don't know how you lose a kneecap and keep the whole rest of the knee, but that's beyond the point. Let's get into the news. Starting off with our only news item this week as we head into the 10th season of the American Sevens Football League. A new rule has been added for the fourth quarter of our games this season. This coming to us from head official Will Franklin. The get back rule, which was piloted in Nevada during the fall brawl, will make an appearance during the 2024 national season, but with the following caveats. And it can only be utilized by a team that is down inside the fourth quarter. For those who don't know what this rule means, on a 3-on-1 throw-off, the team throwing off the ball, if they stop the return team inside the 20-yard line, that means the team that threw off the ball get possession back at the 50-yard line, similar to what an onside kick would be in traditional 11-on-11 padded football. We've seen certain teams like the Vegas Hunters become very proficient in this get-back rule, trying to set up a bunch of points, even being the specialist of the three-point play, which was piloted in Nevada, which will not be seen in the 2024 national campain.
Or in their last game of the fall season, in which, I don't know, they didn't show up to play. But anyway.
We didn't have an editorial for this week's edition of the news. But notwithstanding, it'll be interesting to see how certain teams, especially team featuring our guest this week, utilize that rule if they ever find themselves in position to utilize the get back. That's the news. That voice you heard just before that was Cory Hammond, and replacing Big Rob Fabian is a man who knows Big Rob almost as well as anyone. Maybe outside of Kenny Stansbury, there may not be many people in the A7FL that know Big Rob the same way. The man that is behind the Paterson U. You can call him a general manager, you can call him a team manager, you can call him many things, but you can't call him lazy. It is Ryan Shamar joining us here on the pod, making his semi-annual appearance on the show. Ryan, thank you. And we tried to get the word out. For those who don't know, Ryan made sure to address me, Cory, Rob, and the entire A7FL media community, including, I think, people that were on his team last year, to just note, we are ass. Stop talking about us. But now we have Ryan on the pod mere days after that declaration. So my first question, are y'all still ass? If so, why?
Because we haven't won anything. So, yeah, we ass.
No, we haven't won anything. There's been 10 years of the A7FL, and there's 4 chips hanging up in your... Live from Paterson, New Jersey, the 2024 State of the U address. The Honorable Ryan Shamar.
I don't need any applause, Cory. Hold the applause. Nah, but
well, hopefully you don't get any hopefully you don't get any heckling from like Georgia representatives. I don't know what they're going to be screaming from the stands here. But welcome to the show. Listen, you are one of those kind of manipulators of the narrative. I love the way that you use things to motivate your guys. It's really hard with the group of guys that you have. We actually talked about this recently, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of where it was, why it was, when it was. But you use whatever you can to motivate these guys, because we've at times talked about your rival BIC and how it was very impressive how they took a core group of guys that, you know, fought and built and then won the one championship, and then they rebuilt and kind of reset. The U, even though you've obviously added, subtracted, made moves, you know, the recruiting that Rob talks about, you know, look no further than what you've been able to do year in, year out, kind of finding things to fix, ways that you guys can improve. Look no further than this year. But I meander my way around to say, listen, a lot of the core guys of the U are those original core members winning that first championship all those years back. And you still have those guys ear. And when you get a chance to motivate them, that Facebook post is just evidence of it. You're going to let them know because they do have a lot of pride, don't they?
They have more pride than anybody. I mean, the hardest part about what Rob was saying is that being still here, being still relevant. Like last year, I mean, we lost 16 guys from the 2022 team coming into the 2023 team. This year, we probably lost 17 guys from the 2022 team from the 2023 team going in to this 2024 team. So when you're losing, I say about a little less than a third of the team. I mean, it's crazy. Like when you think about the changeover that you have to stay relevant and still reload and still keep the same core and then have that core be leaders. I mean, nobody's doing that much changeover every single year.
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of the key to the blueprint of the Paterson U? Because you've been able to establish that core offensively and defensively and have that solid 6 to 7 people that you're going to see every game for the Paterson U. But the ability to recruit and the ability to be that cornerstone team has to help, especially when you're getting guys like Jason Sisson, who a lot of people thought was being overlooked on the Trenton BIC, to come to a team where he's going to get a chance to play with a guy like Pat Coburn, who's done everything in this league at the wide receiver position, and play with the most valuable player in our league in Quattrell Huffin. What's that process like to go to a guy like Jason who's won a ring in this league? He won a ring against you and say, hey, all I can offer is opportunity, but at least you're going to have opportunity here. Is that the pitch? Is it being able to play with a guy like Huff, being able to work with a guy like you and the people that you have running this franchise?
I'm gonna be honest. Everything that you see, like it'd be easy for me to get up here and act like I deserve all the credit, but at the same time, it's the captains. Like to be honest, we've had the same core captains since the beginning of this entire 10-year run. Like, and I mean, we started off with 4 captains, core guys. 3 of them are still here, and one of them just retired after he won a championship, which I completely understand. He won 4 championships. I can't get mad at a guy for saying, hey, I've had enough. But when you bring up another guy that's a leader who's been there since the very beginning, and then you make him a captain, those captains hold the entire team accountable and they produce the product that you see. So then when you're able to get a Jason Sisson, he'll say, okay, well, this is an organized team, no shot at anybody else. But it's like this is an organized team. They know what it takes to win, and they have leadership and captains that walk it like they talk it. Okay, cool. I'll come over here with you guys, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's not really much that it takes. It's just, hey, we got room for you. We have a role for you. We can see you producing big numbers with us, and of course, having a quarterback like Huff always helps for a weapon to say, all right, and I have a quarterback that I can trust that can use me. Okay, cool. I'll come try to win a championship with y'all, and that's pretty much all it takes.
Well, and it's funny that when the way you framed it, and when you just look at the raw data, the raw numbers that you gave us, from 2022 to 23, you lose the certain amount, and then from last year, this year, you lose the certain amount. But I would wonder how many of the guys from 2022 that left are guys that kind of returned now this year, right? Kind of took the year off. It's like, I call it, I'm kind of like, last year for you guys was the Ross Rachel break for you guys. And I'm not going to assign who's who, but how many of those guys that you lost in 2022 are returning now that you're returning, one of those core guys that we always talk about who didn't necessarily start as a captain, but when you watch him, whether it's at practice, scrimmage, or in game, he's obviously a huge part of how the U runs in returning star quarterback Quattrell Huffin. How many of those guys are returning from the team, that left? Because you lost a lot of the Baltimore guys, but are you getting a lot of the traditional, like, air quotes, you guys back from 2022?
To be 100% honest with you, I don't mind disclosing it. Some things I won't, because I just want y'all to see it. One, we only had 2 guys we had 3 guys from Baltimore on our team last year. We had Deion McDaniel, we had Snack Sosa, we had Carlos Crosland.
And then Aote later.
Ayote came later. So
Yeah.
2 out of those 4 guys are back. Like Crosland's back, Snad Sosa's
Really?
back. So I
Really?
mean, Dion McDaniel and Ayote. I mean, we wanted them back. I wanted them back, but things didn't go our way. But it is what it is. But as far as the 16 guys we lost from 2022, we probably only got like 5 of those guys back. I mean, they're a big 5, but I mean, out of the 16 guys we lost 2022, they could have went and made their own team and still been able to compete for a championship. I mean, I can just run them down really quickly because they're star-studded guys. I mean, we
Yeah.
lost Ice
Kyle
Cream
Ward.
Truck, we
Yeah.
lost Quattro Huckfin, we lost Kyle Ward, we lost Anthony DeMarcisco, we lost Joel Rivera. We didn't have Big Mo Ramadan last year. We didn't have Defensive Player of the Year Isaac Negron. We didn't have Chill Out Duke. We didn't have DeLon Stevenson. We didn't have like this is their own team almost. Like that's a
Yeah.
team. If you really Kyle Ward, like if you really want to phrase it, however you want to phrase it, I mean we lost. That's a star-studded team with Quattro Huffin at quarterback,
I'll
Cal
take him. I'll take him.
DeMarcisco, and
You can keep
Joel.
Huff, but I'll take the rest of the guys.
If Joel Rivera, Anthony DeMarcisco, and Kyle Ward said, "Okay, let's be a wide receiver group," that's one of the best cores in the whole league, and we lost all of it at one time, and then said, "Okay, what we going to do now?" And then figured it out, and we figured it out and made it all the way to the Northeast Championship. If you tell another team to lose that many amount of star-studded guys and come back the next year and still be able to compete for a championship or make it to the Elite Eight, if you might call it that, last year, that's probably not going to happen for most.
So,
I would love to see a team try. So let's kind of like sit in that because last year I think was the first time in that since that one year that Huff took off that the U wasn't considered, an easy favorite option for anybody going into the preseason. Famously, a former U player, our great friend, shout outs to him, Big Rob Fabian was the one who was actually a little bit critical with you guys preseason because when you did look at the roster, you did lose a lot. And what I kept trying to say, just to remind everybody, and specifically your team, see you guys week 2, guys. But what I was trying to say is that as much of a heart like breaking loss as that was, and all of the losses to BIC they were all close games. They were all one-score games. One play here, one play there. Those games turn totally different. And if you lose the regular season and then the New Jersey championship game, but win the actual championship, nobody cares about the other losses, including the one to the Rare Breed. So what was the main kind of driving force of last year's team to, in my opinion, elevate you guys back to the level of, kind of physical dominance that we had come to expect from the U every single year before that 2022 year where you guys were, super pass happy and it seemed like a little bit, light as far as the depth on the offensive line? What was that driving factor last year that kind of galvanized the team and made them kind of return to that prime U form when everybody was ready to write you guys off?
I mean, to be honest with you, the motivation is losing. Like, we lost 2022. We lost by 2 yards. I mean, shit, I'd rather lost by 2 touchdowns than lose by 2 yards. But respectfully, it's you lose by 2 yards. We got a chance to three-peat, which nobody has ever done in this league. We had a chance twice. We fell short twice. And so it pisses you off. So then naturally now you come back and you say, all right, cool. Now we lost Huff. And we get on here and the good old 3-on-1 podcast says they might only win maybe 4 games, maybe even 3 games. We might even lose to the animals. And it was like, all right.
Look how we were grouped in there. But good, keep it going, keep going.
Now,
We're the enemy.
now
We're
that's
ops.
disrespectful. And then you look around, and for the first time in a long time, even better than our championship year, I could say we had a great O-line last year that was good at run blocking. And I'm looking around, and you got Snags, well, you got Willie Mayweather, and you got all of these running backs. Well, okay, we probably got the best read option quarterback to ever do it in this league. We got an O-line, we got running backs. Let's run the ball. Like, let's become that. But I mean, it didn't become that. It was really supposed to be the Carlos Crosland coming out party, and then he pulled his hamstring against BIC week 3, and then it came back to, all right, Moon, you know what to do, and it just turned on, and it helped us because they didn't plan for that. I know 100% they didn't. When you watch the first 2 weeks, you see us play against Snow Tribe, you see us play against DC Buzz, and you see Crosland out there throwing these 60-yard bombs to Dakari Mims, and you're like, all right, we know how to guard them. And then you come out, and then Moon turns it on in the second quarter of that game, and now they're caught off guard. But
Shame on BIC because Kenny Stansbury knows better than to not
Well,
expect that from Moon.
and I want to just real quick go back to Carlos Crosland and Snag Sosa, two guys who everybody, I believe, including them, expected their time to be with the U to be one season and to go back to Baltimore in whatever form that would be, possibly the Buzz, or there were a lot of talks about a swamp team rising up, but it seems now we're just going to have the Buzz, the Charge, and the Watchmen. What was it like to realize, oh, we get to keep these two really unique pieces, and also kind of give now Huff a counterpart in Crosland who can spare him every once in a while or create a real dangerous option in the slot because he's an intense receiver and can throw the ball and adds a bit of an Ashante element that makes you guys a little more dangerous.
yeah, I mean, Carlos Crosland is really a Swiss Army knife that never got a chance to really showcase himself because the swamp, or what used to be called the Baltimore Gators, has so much weaponry around the field that they never was able to really give him an opportunity. And I mean, he never put his full effort into it from what me and him had discussed, but he can do it all. He has an arm, he can play receiver, he can play DB. He can play anywhere on the field that you ask him to, and he's willing to take the task. And I mean, we built some type of camaraderie with him, to be honest with you, that even after we lost, he said it's a good chance I might come back. Like, he called me and said, hey man, I know it might seem far fetched, but keep me in the loop with everything, because he liked his time here. And I mean, Angelo Lewis is just, or Snag Sosa is just a faithful and loyal guy. So if they had an opportunity to bring back the swamp, then he's going home, and I respect that. But it was a chance Carlos Crosland was going to stay no matter what. Whereas Angelo Lewis is just like, okay, I love the U, but this isn't my home. My home is with the swamp. But if there's no swamp, then I'm coming back, and we welcome him back with open arms.
All right, so we got a couple of questions in there. We got warmed up. Let's just straight get to it. What was the conversation like with you or whoever was involved with Quattrell Huffin bringing him home?
It was a little bit of him just straight up saying, I left because I didn't like X, Y, and Z. I left because I was trying to, do something that I wanted to do for myself, which I think he proved. I think he went out there, he proved that he can do it. I think he proved it to himself that he can take a team from the bottom and make them formidable, even to some people at one point, even a championship contender. I think
What did he
showcased
prove to you?
he proved to me that when he's committed, he still got that dog. That it ain't nothing that's going to take it away
Was
from
that
him.
something? Was that something that the U as a collective or you personally really actually had a question about in the 2022 season?
Not necessarily. It was just the fact that me personally, I never wanted to use him on defense. But if you go back and you look 2016, 2015, he played defense. And last year, he came out there and he told you on his podcast, I'm going to go both ways. And I'm going to play on both sides of the football. And he did that and he executed. He had some big time interceptions. Me personally, that's my quarterback. So I'm not trying to burn him out when I got all these other guys on the roster. But he wanted to win. He wanted that dog. And that made me say, maybe I'm doing something wrong, because he wants to do this. Just let him do it. So maybe I got in my own way. And so there was some ownership there. And he said, hey, I want to come back. I gave him some reassurances with what the team was looking like, or potentially looking like. And he said, now that's the team I can win with. and he came back.
And does giving him that safety net if he does want to play in the secondary, having Carlos Crosland there, who is that Swiss Army knife, if he plays 3 straight plays on on defense, you have Carlos Crosland there for a few plays at quarterback. It gives you a real unique look to your offense and something that outside of maybe the Insomniacs and whatever we're going to see from CP and Buck with the Watchmen, it makes it really hard to strategize against your offense.
Well, I would even say Crosland. I would say his running mate since the beginning of his tenure in the U in Moon. That's kind of what the 1-2 punch that always was. Is Carlos Crosland committed to becoming or consistently playing quarterback, or is he going to stick to wide receiver this year?
I mean, make no mistake about it. Quatron Huffin is the quarterback of this team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
it's really
is
just
Crosland even
when he feel like, here you go, your turn. Like that's when it'll be his turn. But Crosland,
that's when it will be Carlos Crosland's, or would you guys go back to the Moon triple option?
It's Huff's call. Everything
Right.
offensively is his call. He's the leader. He's the 4-time MVP. He's him. It's his call. Now, if he decides, hey, I've had enough. I proved enough today. Here you go. Like Crosland doesn't want to play quarterback.
That's why I asked that, because he proved that he can, right? Yeah. He can prove that he can when he has to.
Yeah.
But the thing is that he also made it very clear that his intention is not necessarily to do that. But give him credits to him that when he was in there, he was able to make plays. So obviously, if he's asked to do wide receiver, scat, slot, jet, whatever, or corner or returner, he's gonna give you full effort, and you're gonna get some potentially highlight plays from him. But now you have Huff. I think Crosland doesn't even focus at all on the quarterback, because if you do need a change of pace, Moon has more than proven in this league, and obviously last year as well, that he can take care of business. Now with the Huff thing, he leaves. He's almost like enemy number one, persona non grata for the U last year. What was the welcome back like? That first practice that he's in the huddle. Did the guys show him more deference and more respect because they realized what they were missing last year without him? Or did they give him shit like they give me shit when I show up to a scrimmage and they say they're going to hit me?
Nah, I mean, the U is a family. And I mean, majority of these guys still are Paterson guys. They still live in Paterson. So, I mean, there wasn't any like beef. Of course, we was upset for a couple of weeks that this is happening, but at the same time, it's hey, that's our friend. If he wants to be happy, then cool. But A7 wise, we're mad as hell. But I mean, at the end of the day, we still would see him. It was still conversation. It was still love. So when he come back, you might hear a joke every now and then, but for the most part, it wasn't any shade. Now, me personally, I feel like with that old line last year, the sky was the limit. I think we could have easily won the championship, but at the same time, can't be too greedy. You went 4, and somebody said, hey, I want to do something for myself. I didn't like the way last year went. We just got to own it and let him be his own man. That's all there is to it. We happy to have him.
Well, and he's back, and we can, that is what it is.
Hey, man, I told you last year when it happened, I didn't want it to happen. I told you we couldn't replace him. I was still in denial. I didn't believe it was going to happen. But I told you families fight. And it's over now.
That is true. And as we look across the rest of the league, I would love your thoughts, because you're not one to hold back an opinion. There's been a bit of an arms race during this offseason. You obviously took part in it, getting Huff back, getting the Ramadan brothers, getting Jason Sisson. But not to the extent of some other teams, like your rival, the BIC.
Well, really
a lot of stuff.
They didn't get the big names that they
alleged.
Right?
They made attempts. They were overtures. Obviously, Mark Bagway staying with the Nightcrawlers. A lot of conversation around Logo Davis talking with other teams. I can say for a fact that teams that were playing deep into the playoffs last season had conversations with Logo Davis, and those seemingly never materialized because as of now, everybody's staying where they are except Trey Robinson, who went to the BIC. But what's your take on some of the moves and some of the lack of action from some of the teams, because when it looks into the Northeast this season, it feels like the teams that we know are going to be good are remaining good. Certain teams got upgrades, but not a lot of teams in the middle class made a huge leap. Would you agree with that
I'm gonna
statement?
be honest with you. From what I've seen, everybody from the Renegades to Snow Tribe to everybody that I've seen have made adjustments. They've made changes. It might not be splashes to hit the media board with, but they've made adjustments to put themselves in better position than they ever did before. Like me personally, I never wanted to see Corey leave the Renegades because I thought Corey was the best thing for the Renegades. I never wanted to see some of these other players move to other teams that they did, but I like Kenny Stewart playing for Snow Tribe. I like CP going to spell who is it, Buck out
Buck.
there,
Buck,
and
Buck, yeah, Buck.
Buck,
I
yeah.
I I was happy when I heard John Goss was going to the Bucks. Like, I mean, I like to see things like that because it brings character. I mean, when it comes to the BIC situation, like BIC is going to be BIC. Like, I'm not surprised. I'm not scared. I'm not none of that. I just whatever they're going to do because Sterry drives the engine, Ashanti carries the load, and everybody else just has to do their job. Like, I'm not really feeling any kind of way. Honestly, I was sad to hear about Logo and Bagway leaving because I felt like it took a big chess piece off the board because I feel like they got the potential and they should have won the championship last year, in my opinion. And they might have even had a chance to go back to back if Bagway doesn't blow the game against Rare Breed in Delaware. Like, there's so many things that could have happened, and I didn't want to see that it happen, regardless if it was the BIC or to the Insomniacs or whoever. But I mean, at the end of the day, 7 people gonna play.
Mm.
So he kind of touching on some of the other divisions because obviously of all of the kind of minds in our league, at least in my opinion, are one of the most well respected across the league. What is your overall opinion on some of the other divisions as a whole? And what teams do you look at, not just, for instance, obviously the Insomniacs are going to come up there, the champions, but what are some of the other teams that you look at as far as either who they have or what they're doing as a greater organization that you've kind of taken notice to as we enter the 10th season of a league that when me and you first came into it was basically just guys from New Jersey trying to have fun in a way that was relatively legal. I don't even know how legal it was back, but relatively legal. So what's your opinion on, like I said, other divisions as a whole, and what are some of the things that other teams are doing that's catching your notice?
Um, I haven't watched a Vegas fall season. I'm just gonna be completely honest, but I have seen
One
clips of.
game was a one-score game, and Rob said it was never even close. So as far as the fall, you missed a couple of new running backs in the division that I think are going to make an impact in the spring, but you missed some blowouts. So you could
Be,
just
because
cliff notes some of those games.
because we have a running clock in this league, the running game is important, and I'm never gonna say it's not because it helps teams take care of the ball and have a more methodical, controlled drive. But in this league, I feel like 80% of it is still playing town beef, and 20% of it is playing A7. And what I mean by that is 80% of it is just ground and pound, and we're going to try to play tough defense and keep the games close. But that's not a championship formula for what the other 20% is showing you that they can do. The night crawlers are showing you that they can score in the blink of an eye. The Insomniacs have shown you that they can do the same and they can give you a balanced, methodical drive. I think that you can do the same thing. We can score in one play or we can give you a controlled drive. BRC is a track meet team. Like, they're going to get up and down the field. They choose every now and then to give courage to his 10 carries. But for the most part, they're a track meet team. And it's like if you're not the Watchmen last year were more of a up and down style track meet, your turn, my turn, with different personnel groups, and it made it difficult to adjust. They weren't a run heavy team. The only time I ever seen the Watchmen really run the ball last year was against the Animals, which is a smart game plan to keep Huff on the sideline. and bite the clock. But at the same time, that's not a winning formula. You have to be able to be balanced. If you're not balanced, then you're not going to win. And that's just point blank period what it is. If you don't have a quarterback that can throw the ball, then you don't have a chance. It helps if he can be a little mobile with it, like Cory Hammond on his options. But other than that, I mean, you don't have a chance, bro. If you're just gonna come out and run the ball 20 times and run jet motion counters and all of it, it's not gonna win you a championship.
Are you characterizing your guys' team last year? Because I think
Honestly,
not in the games that you guys won, because let's be clear, Kareem Moon is one of the most clutch playmakers in this league's history. So against BIC, even though he's not traditionally that guy, found a way to figure it out. But in the games that you lost, specifically to the one team, the Watchmen, it seemed like the thing that you guys were missing from getting to that next step, to that next level, was the consistency in the we need it now pass game. You guys can
yeah,
still do the play action and hit dot boss on one of those those tight end wheels that Moon and Dot are famous for. But when it was third and 15 or whatever, and you needed to get a plant your foot, throw the ball to an open receiver, which you guys had open receivers. Let's be clear. Your
yeah.
receiving
I
core
mean,
with Pat Coburn, et cetera, et cetera. There were guys that probably could have made those plays.
see,
Is that? Go ahead.
I'm a film guy. So when people talk about wins and losses, I look at how you won and how you lost because to me it dictates a trend, whether it just be prisoner of the moment or we won. The Watchmen won. I'm never going to take anything away with them. However, I do feel like in the second game, we left a lot out there on the table. We had big third downs. We had a drop pass by Kareem Moore. I felt he could have walked in the end zone. We had another big play where Carlos Crosland fumbled after we got a big stop. Like we were down 13-0. We came back and tied the game up 13-13 going into the half and got the first stop in the second half, and we just didn't execute on those big plays downfield. They did, and that was literally the difference in the game. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I mean, let's make no mistake about it. I can be critical of my own team. Yeah, I did feel like we got too run heavy because it was working, but it gets boring. It gets it doesn't it makes the defense feel like you're too predictable with what you're gonna do. And it's not a winning way when you don't have balance.
Well, guess what you added this year is if you guys could continue that running formula, the play action pass to the 70-yard bomb, jump ball that, we could, I'm hypothetically seeing in my nightmares already. I saw it Sunday, actually, for up close and personal. I also saw a couple other things. Look, watch out, guys. Good luck watching. But long story short, I think the thing that to me was almost heartwarming as we enter the 10th season in the league is it just when we got the news, because earlier on in the offseason, there was the post that Matt put up of Defensive Player of the Year, MVP at the Snow Tribe practice. It made news and it was buzzworthy, and shout outs to Big Mike. He was doing his best. But when we heard that Huff was going back to the U, that Huff was bringing a lot of the U guys, that Big Mo is back in the league. Shout outs to Big Mo as we're at, Ramadan is, I think, today. So, eat up, eat up when you can. Now it feels like we're getting that, let's run it back, guys, situation, because you said it earlier in the show. The three-peat came down to one play at the end of a huge game against one of the better or best teams that we've seen in recent memory, including some of your teams. So, I'm not disparaging to you. So the fact that you guys were this team that almost felt like you needed a rebuild at the end of 2022, losing by how many points was it?
About 2.
Oh, yeah, a lot of points, and then all of a sudden you guys are written off. Tell me what some of the motivating factors are getting back into it for 2024. A lot of guys that have had a really long, historic run in this league having the motivation to run it back. And tell me why it's the New Jersey born, bred, and based league now seeing Vegas talk about it like it's theirs. Tell me why it's that. No.
It's funny. It's comical. Only because last year with losing Huff, and I mean, you can do your research. It was the worst year in U history, and our worst year is not making the National Final Four. We went to the National Final Four 10 years in a row, and so by us not being able to have Huff and falling short of even being representing the Northeast in the National Final Four, that right there is motivation enough. And I mean, for Vegas to come out and win 1 year, I just think, like, let's be honest, the Renegades played 3 tough games the whole season. They played Sick with It twice, and they played the championship game against Instant.
You call them the
You
Renegades,
said
right?
Oh, I'm
Renegades
sorry.
because you're looking at
My
my stupid
Was that
face.
was that
But
was that a
telling you, I
Freudian
played
slip?
3 games that were tough. 2 against Sick with It, and 1 in the championship against the Nightcrawlers. Whereas we in the Northeast feel like we're in a gauntlet. Like the U's swept BIC, BIC blew the doors off the Watchmen swept the U twice. Like that type of camaraderie, that type of like gamesmanship.
Parody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, the
that's all
competition.
going to be there. Like we had a close game with Snow Tribe in the first half of one game. I think the Renegades and BIC had a good game for like the first half or the first 3 quarters of their matchup early in the season. Like you're going to get these games that are really bang outs and really competitive games in our division, whereas outside of it, we feel like the Nightcrawlers are going to walk through. Sin
Mhm.
City's going to walk through, and Insomniacs are going to walk through. So let's be
And to be
real.
clear, when you say Sin City, you obviously mean the real Sin City, which is Cincinnati, Ohio, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, like I mean,
And
we don't feel like they play tough games. So I mean, when you have all of this,
well,
Well, let's
let's
talk.
further.
Hold on, because let's talk to the teams that aren't the
No,
Insomniacs.
no, let's
Because
hold on. I think that you are right, Matt, but I think it's a little bit better because when this is a conversation that really offends the other side of the ball on Wednesdays, whatever,
but
whatever.
that's I'm trying to
Well,
drill a little bit deeper into it,
exactly. So,
because the dermis of the
well, let them
conversation
get
is
it to
based
talk.
on the Insomniacs against everybody else, but they say Vegas versus everybody.
well,
Ryan,
teams
pragmatically,
2 through 8 over in Vegas, they're claiming that they won the chip too, even though that they obviously weren't on the
but
field during the
that's
Davis
what I'm
championship.
trying to
But we've
say.
seen this movie before, right, Corey? It used
Well,
to
and what
be.
I wanted to say is, because it's unfair for them to keep hearing that they don't play any tough games, and for them to keep feeling like they're being attacked for it because it's not their fault, specifically Insomniacs. But let's further clarify what you mean by that, because factually, somebody argue with me facts, which is show me the facts where you can show that the Insomniacs play the tough games, because you can't. It doesn't exist. It's not a lie. It's not an exaggeration. It's not even shade to say that the Insomniacs weren't challenged that much in their season. But to be clear, I think if you further clarify your point, Ryan, because listen, New Jersey's been playing this thing the entire time it's been the A7FL and years, because it was Town Beef before. So there's obviously this leveling out, and there is the even the bottom teams know how to play this game at an effective level at times. Now the roster separates, blah blah blah. But when you say that they don't play tough games, it obviously we talk about the final score. But based on some of the film that you've seen from the other divisions, could you further clarify? And I think that this is my point, and maybe you agree with me. It's not just the final scores of those games. It's the competitiveness, play in, play out in the spots that matter, the trenches, the one-on-one in the corners,
Bro,
and
it's not
the wide
even.
receivers, the
It's
linebackers and the running backs. This is a physical division, and what we talk about is not necessarily that the team isn't good in the Insomniacs and they're not playing good matchups. That's clearly sometimes the case when you see the score. But in the course of the full season, watch what the Insomniacs have to deal with physically, because they don't have a Renegades team that even last year, without me being there, let's just talk about them last year. Is that a defensive line that anybody's looking forward to seeing?
I mean, they had a good defensive line last year. I mean, to me, and then I'll come back to this because I do
Yeah, go
think
ahead. Go ahead.
you slighted you slighted Devon Burton over, like, and you gave it to Trey Baskerville, but I'll get to that later. Me personally, I feel as though and this is no shade or disrespect. We saw RTC play against BIC, and I think they lost handsomely. So
55 to 19. So
right,
the 12
right.
points at the end made it look
Right.
nice,
So
but
the best running back in the country got itself kicked by 5 touchdowns, respectfully. And then you add a team like Scooter, David Clark, Trey Robinson, you bring in AJ, and now all of a sudden you're just saying, okay, cool, we're gonna dominate all the competition over here because to be honest, the Insomniacs are the only team that we feel like can compete over here. Sick with it to us is like, I don't know, maybe a hair better than the Renegades. Maybe. Like I feel like right now, if you line Sick with it up with the Renegades with Corey Hammond at quarterback, you guys have a dogfight for 4 quarters. I'm just
well,
gonna
I
be
think I think the defensive line of the Renegades would give the offensive line of the Cichlid a problem and might, even it out. But to be clear, I've seen them up close and personal. The playmakers for Cichlid, Lavish T, Tyre
right.
Edwards, right? And now he's getting it. I think by spring he'll be close to 100% healthy. In the fall, I think he still needed a couple of games, which was good. He got it in the fall. But Darren Palmer is maybe one of we talked Sunday about the top 7 wide receivers. Darren Palmer is that next level playmaker that I think if you guys stood on a field next to him, you'd see. But I think that's not necessarily an unfair way to put it because the other thing about football, it's about matchups. And the thing that you don't necessarily see on a consistent basis in all of the other divisions, this isn't just, singling out Vegas, as these divisions grow, is the consistency in the trenches, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, the Insomniacs defensive line is not one of those teams that I'm talking about. And at times, when you look at what Sick Wit can do to teams like, I don't know, OTT and the Golden, the Pit Bosses, you see that. But the level of pressure week in, week out in the Northeast Division, we're talking the Watchmen, where a guy in Freight Train is literally, he's, I'll just use my own anecdotes just so people can kind of get into the moment and it's a little bit more visual. And people hate me. So, if they close their eyes and see me getting killed by another defensive lineman, maybe that'll bring some joy to our fans.
Breathe, Corey, for the love of God, man.
I'm really trying to spend less time talking in the pod. So what I'm trying to do is speed up my words so that I say the same amount of words, which I can't control.
I'm taking you to a fucking
it for
elocution
you.
class.
No, I got you.
If Sick with
Go
it
ahead.
played on the East Coast, Sick with it would literally be fifth out of the East Coast teams. We wouldn't put them over the Nightcrawlers with Bagway and Logo. You wouldn't put them over the Watchmen with Buck and company. You wouldn't put them over to you. You wouldn't put them above BIC. And you would put them fifth and still say to yourself, yo, they got a chance to lose if John Gauze plays for the Buzz with certain players going to that team. You would still say they got a chance to lose to the Renegades and Corey. You would still say, hey, if they turn over here, turn over there, they might lose the Snow Tribe. They would be fifth on the East Coast, but they're number 2 on the West Coast. And that's what I'm trying to say. The difference is there. If you put the Insomniacs on the East Coast schedule, they got a chance to lose 4 games.
But be clear, they got a chance to go undefeated too. That's a good roster.
Right. That's what they have a chance to go undefeated, but nobody's betting money on that. Like you would say, hey, they're gonna come out of here bloody. They're gonna come out of here banged up. They're gonna come out of here maybe even with 2 losses. Like realistically, I think if they played all 4 teams on the East Coast that were top teams, they're losing at least 2 games. I honestly feel
especially if they had to travel. Now the travel thing.
So what about this as a hypothetical? Let's say we're playing A7FL 2K and you're doing franchise mode and you want to move all the teams around. You have to move the Insomniacs to the East. What's the one team from the East you're moving to the West that you think could be the least successful team in the East to win in the West?
to win.
Like, what's
the
that
whole
one
West
team?
Or just get wins?
To win the whole West. The least successful team to where it's parity. To where if you took the Insomniacs out, even if this team is trash or has a sub 500 record in the East, they could still win the entire Western Conference.
I mean, okay, outside of them top 4 teams, I don't feel that any of the other teams would go win the West, but I think the buzz would be if you took the Insomniacs and moved them to the East, and you took the buzz with John Gauze as the quarterback and put them out West, the buzz would be a top 2 seed in the West when it's all over.
But could you say that any
3 at
team
the worst
outside of the top 4, outside of the top 4 teams in the
will
East,
go win the West? No, because I don't. Like I said, I don't think I'm putting Sick with it right after those top 4 teams in the West. So I'm
Yeah.
saying Sick with it would probably be the 1 seed. The Force, from what I saw last year, would probably be the next argument to be the 2 seed. But I definitely could see the Force and the Buzz having a bang out, especially with John Gauze at quarterback and Joshua Butcher on the team now. I can easily see the Buzz and the Force having a game that might come down to the last drive easily.
Well, and just to fact check, because this is a state of the U, right? Is John Gauze buzz or charge or what? What is?
I can't say 100%.
Yeah,
I mean,
so let's
spoken-
just we'll talk a hypothetical. So just to be clear to the rest of the people listening, that and obviously Vegas, who are right now pulling out their hair in the dry heat out there, I know it sucks to hear people from New Jersey talk about New Jersey being
worst.
good, right? Oh God, if a place praised their own teams, that would be disgusting for other places to hear. Like, for instance, let's just hypothetically think if Vegas was out there saying that Vegas teams were better than other teams, we would rightfully get pissed off. So, and they're better than that, so they're not going to stoop to our level. But so I apologize that you're hearing a New Jersey guy saying that.
So
the New Jersey
don't clip this part of the podcast out and drop it like Wednesday morning.
No, specifically drop it like tonight.
Okay.
To Nevada and tag me so that all of the comments I can see. I don't know why I choose violence every time we've been doing this pod. But,
because you
maybe
want
it's 'cause I'm
attention,
old now.
Corey. Because
No, I
you
don't
need
want
hugs.
attention.
I'm gonna give you such a hug on the 24th. I'm gonna try to make up for the fact
If
that
I wanted-
nobody loves us.
Listen, if I wanted attention, I would respond to all these people trying to get clout from somehow using my stupid ass name. Like, find a better person to get clout from. Jesus. But anyway,
You're
talking
the face
about
of
Vegas.
this 3-on-1 podcast besides Matt.
That's
and the
no.
players.
I'm not even Cory Handsome. My name is Cory Hammond, and I'm not even Cory Handsome.
Well, that's
So I'm
because Matt has the curls.
Yeah, I'm not even the hair
that.
either. Like you said, I'm the skip. I'm the
Listen,
person that they love to hate. I'll eat it. I'll take it. I'm just not
I'm gonna
racist like
segue
that
for
jerk.
Just 1 second. I
Sure.
was so mad looking at that top 7 receiver list, and I was upset because
I'm sorry we kept you off.
No, I'm fine. We didn't have a high-powered passing season, but when you look at the Northeast, I feel like the Northeast has so much depth at the receiver position that most teams have about a good 2 to 3 weapons. Some teams got 5.
But that makes it hard for a lot of those wide receivers to stand out, which is the problem when you're trying to build a list that's mostly built on stats and the performance that we see on the games of the week and in the playoffs.
Right. No,
It's hard for you to give.
That's why I feel like
Yeah, so that's
a guy like David Clark to me is really good, but I can put David Clark right next to Kason Campbell and feel like the talent level is on the same. It's just you play.
Yeah, but you can make that same you're just basically you're comparing trading cards. That's what it is. We're comparing trading cards.
What it is, and I think it's interesting if you hear it out loud, right? The difference in the productivity of the wide receivers in the divisions has a direct correlations to the strength of the defensive line's pass rush in the divisions.
That's true.
Because let's be clear, if the Insomniacs and Sick With It and the Force and those guys who were putting up huge passing numbers last year in the Vegas division had to face the Renegades, even the Snow Tribe's defensive line, or the U, or BIC, or the Watchmen, right? If they had to face those defensive lines week in and week out, some of those offensive passing numbers might level out. But let's be clear, and no more blaspheming the Insomniacs offensive line and Kenny Mack and Oos and Schwenk, who somehow is always not included as the tight end, but we know he's a blocker, not a receiver. My bad, Schwenk. You get the token catch here and there, but you're a blocker. But kind of bringing it back to the Vegas slander. Let's be clear. this isn't necessarily something that is empirical, right? We're not talking about. Hold on, Ryan.
Right.
All right, you're good. I was gonna say if you got to talk, just mute. We're good. I'll a State of the Union again. I'll sit up here and filibuster for as long as you need. I'm good at that. That's a talent. But talking about Vegas, what we really do need, and it will eventually come, but just unfortunately not this year. Sorry, all of the fans, all of the players, everyone interested, is to put these words to the test. And now, without putting these words to the test, we're asking a guy who's using his football mind, his football eyes, to make an assessment of what he sees. And if anybody doesn't necessarily like it, just remember people that represent your own place, whether it's Ohio, whether it's Florida, whether it's California, whether it's Vegas, are going to have the same kind of slant with what they see day in and day out of their own guys. But again, when we are talking about the greater comparison to top Northeast teams, top Vegas teams, top Ohio teams, top Florida teams, I think the other divisions do, in a private moment, realize that there is a little bit of work to do. And as long as teams are being honest with themselves, whether it's the Insomniacs realizing that the competition that they play week in and week out isn't going to give them the full test that they need to really go back to back and win the championship against whatever they're going to face in the finals, whether it is the Nightcrawlers again, whether it is somehow the Watchmen, and we'll talk about them a little later, Ryan, or it is one of the New Jersey teams, or hey, I'll give you guys a puncher's chance, maybe even the real Sin City. But when we really look at what the rest of these divisions need to do, or the rest of the teams in all of these divisions need to do, Rob kind of brought it up, and even though I disagreed with him because I didn't understand the full point, the more that these teams build from the bottom up of the division, the better those top teams are going to get, because week in, week out, it is going to be more than just the cliched promise of iron sharpens iron that they always talk about in Vegas. When two teams are actually facing each other, building each other up so that they're ready to play top competition, I think that's more of the narrative that other divisions should be focused on. Don't get offended and immediately fight back. Again, referencing the State of the Union, we could all come together here as an A7FL nation to just make everyone better. We don't want to make anything great again, but we can make everyone better. Don't worry, I have the response, the Brit response later, Ryan. I know you're waiting for that.
I mean, the thing about that is realistically, we're all trying to win a championship here, So at the end of the day, people are going to put together the best team to do just that. So I'm not upset at anybody that does it. I just wish we had a league where everyone would have a similar path in the playoff to show who the real champion is, where everyone has the same kind of playing field, where like if the competition level was there on the road to getting to the championship, and then of course the championship. And I just feel like right now the East and A7 looks like the Western Conference in the NBA in 2000, and you just got one team out west, maybe two, that's doing anything that is relevant to a championship, whereas everyone else is like trying to get better, filling out the league. They haven't really fully adjusted. They haven't got the personnel. They just don't have it yet, or haven't had the mindset to get the recruiting to get those players that are really going to get them to win a championship. And Rob was right. The word is recruit, whether that be through flag, semi-pro, going and grabbing high school teammates that are still in shape, or ones that can get in shape, whatever the key is, or old college teammates that aren't actively pursuing the dream of the NFL or the XFL or wherever that is, and literally give them an opportunity to come still showcase their talent, showcase their ability, and compete to win $25,000.
Well, looking at a hypothetical scenario where there's 8 teams in the league and it was one season and you had to pick from across the A7FL only 8 teams, what are those 8 teams?
BIC, the U, I would love to see Baltimore represented by two teams if possible. I would like the Gators to come back, and of course, either it be Watchmen or Rare Breed or whatever it is that they want to do there. I want two teams. I'm honestly, I would like two teams from Jersey, two teams from Baltimore, two teams from Vegas, and then the Sin City Chaos and the Nightcrawlers. And I think that would stop everything, regardless of how you put it together. If we had a 1 through 8, whatever that is, and just find a way for us to be able to let those 8 teams compete for a championship, I think that would be the best thing that nobody can complain about. Could nobody say we're favored? Can nobody say anything? Just the best team won.
The only thing that people would say is as you see other spring leagues doing the league with only 8 teams, it's just the inventory of games gets boring when there's not that many teams to be interested in, and if you don't have enough teams, blah blah blah. But I do think that shrinking either the number of teams or the number of players per team eventually would lead to parity that we're looking for. But an interesting kind of segue into one of the things that you mentioned, and kind of one of the topics that I think is an interesting offseason topic to talk about is, and we've danced around them in multiple topics that we've already talked about, is the Baltimore Watchmen. When you talk about building a team to win a championship, last year for the Baltimore Watchmen is as close to, I think, as it could get for just that purpose. When you look at what they were either forced to do by circumstance or chose to do because it makes sense, and really the narrative doesn't, I don't give a shit. But the point is that last year's Watchmen team was built to be the pie in the sky, fantasy type of hypothetical, Baltimore all-star team, or as close as we could get to a representation of that with what we have in the A7FL. Of all the teams that we've mentioned, you've mentioned my Renegades, you've mentioned the Snow Tribe, you've mentioned the BIC, and you've even mentioned the Buzz, and we just don't know where that sits, but let's just assume. What do you think about what happened with the Watchmen? Because last year it was the rare breed in the Gators. It was the, extinct crocodile species. Now it's pretty much back to the rare breed. And if you look at it just on paper, that feels like they take a huge step back from where they were last year as the Northeast champs, and pretty much, a messianic performance of Mark Bagway basically standing in their way from being the representative in Vegas for the championship. What is your take on what took place for them in the offseason, how it kind of shook out, and if that's the right move for the league and their division or not?
I'm going to tell them to grab a brochure from the U 2022, to grab a brochure from the Gators 2019, grab a brochure from all the teams that were either championship teams or on the cusp of winning a championship that lost, got upset, and for whatever reason had creative differences and divided, because it's not easy winning the championship. They were a super team. You took the two best teams in Baltimore and put them together. It's just no different than the Insomniacs and Sick with it being put together and coming out east and saying, okay, who want what? Like, that is basically what they did. And
Yeah.
sometimes when that happens and you're running a two quarterback system that has two different complete offensive philosophies that call plays differently with two different skill sets, in my opinion, whichever one is working, the other one is going to say to the other guy, hey, you're not hot today. Give it to me. And the alpha dog in him is going to say, nah, you got to let me go get that back. I don't care if I didn't score the last 2 drives. Let me go again. So it's not always easy. But what I will tell them is now they're in our shoes. They're in the shoes of a team that lost, however they lost. When we lost on the 2 yard line, lost about 16 guys and had to say, okay, let's go at it again and see if you can overcome adversity, because that's why a lot of teams don't repeat, which is why Rob was saying what he was saying, and not to toot our own horn. Some things did go our way. Some things went the New England Patriots way. Some things went the Kansas City Chiefs way. It happens when you're trying to repeat as a team, when you have to overcome these obstacles. And one of them, regardless if you won or lost, losing hurts more than winning. by a mile. Like everyone knows that. But when you feel like you have the team and you still lost, that hurts even more because every last player that played for that Watchmen team felt like, okay, so what? We're playing against the Nightcrawlers. We beat them last year. And the Nightcrawler said, oh, okay, well, we got this kid named Lobo Davis, and we got Rico Brown, who I didn't see against the Rare Breed 2 years ago,
Me
and
neither.
came out there, and Rico went crazy.
I think he
Lobo
was.
went crazy.
To be fair, I think he was there with against the Rare Breed, but he didn't have that kind of game.
I didn't see him.
And they may or may not have a former NFL All-Pro just lingering in the background. And, like, he's the least talked about guy on the fucking team.
I saw number 69. I think his name's like Reek or Zeke, whatever his name is. And I saw the return guy that wears the shiest
BME Keys.
Yeah.
I saw them two receivers 2 years ago. I didn't see Rico Brown. Last year was my first time seeing him, and he went crazy.
Back to the Watchmen. They split up. It is what it is. And I think that happens. Well, and I think that happens a lot when you do the super team. When you do the super team and it doesn't work, the egos which were meshing, and you were talking about it when a quarterback's got it going and you go to the other quarterback, he better have it going too, or it becomes an argument on the sideline. And they were able to make it work. And the only game that they lost in the regular season to BIC, specifically Ace Boogie, John Goss, was not there. It was our friend Sir Lenneth Hedrick the third. Shout outs to my guy. But when you look at where the Watchmen are now, and whether it's the Buzzer or the Charge or whatever, who won that divorce? At least in the custody of the quarterbacks. Do you think that the Watchmen won? Because to be clear, that the Watchmen's current quarterback was almost a used quarterback last year. Who won that divorce and getting custody of the quarterbacks?
To be honest with you, and this is no disrespect to John Goss because he's the only champion from Baltimore, but respectfully, since that year of him winning a championship, Buck has been to the National Final four out of the last 5 years because they didn't play 2020, but 19, 21, 22, and 23, he made it to the National Final Four. So honestly, they still won the battle of the quarterbacks. Now, whether or not they'll win the war of winning the championship, that's still with John Goss because he's the only person who has his name in the A7 trophy.
And Snacks too, but he's with you. So we talked about Baltimore, right? We threw our Vegas slander over there. Shout outs to our guys. Check out the other side of the ball when they don't have politicians on. But this is a State of the U address, so you might as well check those out too. It is an election year. Everybody should vote for whoever. Sorry, Republicans. I know when Taylor Swift says that, you go crazy. But
drive it back on the road. Back on the road.
What? I got off-wheel tires. Let's go.
I don't get. Well, no, we're the We're supposed to be the podcast that keeps the show on track, which is near impossible with the fucking people
I'm here,
on it.
So and we don't got robbed to G-check.
Where were you going with this? Where were you going?
First of all, that was just my opportunity to throw shade and make jokes. So thank you guys. No, I got Taylor Swift's back. I was making a Republican jab, but anyway. See, it doesn't matter in New Jersey. It's always blue. But speaking of,
it's like fighting Ali. He just beats you down over time. It's just.
We're not the podcast that brought Congress.
I know,
on.
but you're the one belaboring the point while our guest is here.
Whoa.
He's he's the person that listens to the podcast the most, and he's just tired of it.
So everyone's tired of me, so that's why I'm going to continue to talk.
No, not of you, just of the podcast. Yeah, and just the concept of us talking.
Corey, where are you going with this?
We just slammed out. I was going to throw a shot at Vegas and then go back to praising them. They like their praise. That they need it. It makes them feel better. But we just disparaged Vegas pretty thoroughly, and it is what it is. But there are some things that when we look at the division, when I look at the division, I see that they got a lot going on, and obviously it's from the top down in the way the divisions run and kind of the support and the things around the division that they get. But let's kind of focus on the field. What are some of the positives that we can get from the division that we just disparaged like ridiculously, as they currently do actually hold the championship trophy over there, all the way over 3 time zones away. What are some of the things that when you look at the division, whether individual players, teams, or as a whole, that you see and we can kind of give them the praise to, so that they get that quota filled, so that while they're listening, they don't, flood the comments with Corey hate?
They have the athletes, they just don't have the consistency offensively. They have receivers, they have running backs, they have return guys, but it's either they're just not cohesive units that are able, and they don't play any defense. Like, I mean, you might have a good pass rusher here or there, but as a collective, like group of 7 guys, they're not playing any defense. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat that at all. Like, I understand a lot of them play flag, but a lot of them are still only rushing 2 defenders. They're not creating any real pressure for the quarterbacks. A lot of their games are still very much so high scoring. They're not playing defense. It's not that the offense is just so good or this player is just so fast. Like, no, you're not tackling them and not playing defense.
What's one
Well,
thing?
what would you
Go
say
ahead. Yeah.
to those who say the competition out there is iron sharpens iron?
I think
When
3 through 8 are sharpening each other, and 1 and 2 are just walking through.
I mean, that's what the
Yeah.
statistics show, except for that Force Sickwood matchup in the playoffs. That was actually one of the most compelling games out there all season. You're a defensive guy, and one of the things that you bring to the U, other than the management and kind of the level head that gets all those egos in line with the winning formula, is the defensive mind. And you're the guy that will go over to J-Rock, will go over to whoever you got in there at linebacker, just absolutely murdering people. We talked about Burton, but as a defensive mind, what are some of the things that you can kind of give to them as ways that they can make steps in getting better at those things? Is it the recruiting thing and finding the guys that are willing to do those things and not flag guys? Is it just, kind of the commitment to the physicality? Is it an effort thing? What do you see as the way that they can improve that, as this state of the U is meant to bring the A7FL nation together?
I really don't want to give them shit, but if I had to give them anything, it would really just be me saying they need to find ways to create more pressure. Like, I know AJ is dominant, and the other guy that you told me about, I can't think of his name right now. He's a decent pass rusher also. I think that plays for Sick with it. But instead of you depending on one guy to just win his one-on-one and create pressure, they need to create pressure as a collective, because they're not doing their corners any favor by letting the quarterback stand back there for 5 seconds to throw the football.
Yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine. I really get jealous of that. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just jealous.
I just told somebody the other day, I said, Corey went out there in Vegas and flourished. They just
No, but the time I went out there, but listen, the time I went out there, I had 0 guys that showed up to play offensive line. I had, and no disrespect to him because he did his best by just going out in a route, but I had Daniel Packer in there actually being a guy that was supposed to block for me, facing a team that they named the Dream Team. One of the things that I would say is, as the league, especially out in Vegas, especially in Ohio, I think Florida already kind of does this, and who knows what California's doing. I can't wait to see some actual film of them actually playing some A7FL football out there, and not whatever else they get, produced in some goofy way. But let's name some of the most dominant, just pure, just edge rushers in our league's history, and what those guys, let's just say what those guys look like, right? And I'm going to start with a guy that, you know him well. Everybody knows him well. He makes sure that he's known. But Ole Bell, as a defensive end, outside linebacker, pass rusher, you look at a guy who's what? And correct me where I'm wrong, Ryan. 5'9", like 195, 215 max. That's not a guy that you think, oh, defensive line pass rusher. But in the A7FL, guys like Ole, guys like on your team, Fletch, when you guys use, which was sinful, by the way, the running back from the Immortals, I'm blanking on his name. Charles Irving, right? When you start talking about some of the defensive line, the dominance in the Northeast, it's not the defensive line looking guy. right? And AJ McQuaig is a big guy. He's really strong, and he has a build that's relatively similar, but he almost fits that mold because when he ran a 40, I think it was 4.6 at the championship. So is that maybe one of the things is as they look into the personnel that they choose to build a roster with to go away from the guy that's, and no disrespect to him because he sounds like he's an awesome human and he's a really good football player and has a cool mind. I'd love to hear more from him. I heard him on the other side of the ball. The CICO guy, and I just butchered his name, but the oos for sick with it that they hand the ball off to and he trucks people, but he's more of an offensive lineman, defensive lineman guy. That's the build that when you imagine a defensive lineman in football, it's like, all right, 6'2", 310. But in the A7, those 5'9", 205 guys coming around the edge with strength, those wrestler builds, that's kind of more or less the kind of guy that's been super successful rushing the passer in our league, is it not?
Yeah, you need a guy that can move. Like you have different guys. Like you have Freight Train, whose arms are long to the point where like once he like stabs your tackle in the chest, so that he's not able to make a good stalk block on him. He's just bending around the edge, and he has a motor that's probably second to none in the league, besides maybe Verardi, who I also think is up there, but he's another smaller guy also, but just quick. Like you need to be able to be quick, low to the ground, have lateral quickness. Olay has that. I mean, AJ has that. I just feel like AJ kind of needs somebody on the other side of him to be dominant because in the championship game, they put AJ on Bagway's blind side and Bagway just rolled out right after he got sacked in the first quarter. He's like, okay, yeah, I
Well,
don't care anymore.
and to kind of finish that kind of conversation, it wasn't another D lineman that plays D line his entire life that made the huge plays at the D line for the Insomniacs, was it? Who was it? It was Q, their backup quarterback, right?
Right.
So it, listen, there's a lot that Vegas could learn if they approach and look, the Insomniacs specifically don't need to be humble at all unless, they're coming into this season thinking that they don't even have to, put forth effort to win back-to-back championships. I think that's well documented of what we've, kind of discussed on our pod. But if Vegas as a division comes at this season with a little bit of humility and realizes that there are ways in which they can improve and trying to find some of those ways by looking at the pioneers, the foundation, the builders of this league, and trying to mimic what's worked for, specifically teams like, I don't know, the only multiple time champion, especially back to back in the U, other than BIC. I think that they could really exponentially grow even more because let's face it, for all the things we disparage Vegas about, look at their division. They're fielding now. We can question the depth of talent and how good those teams are, but they're fielding out 8 teams out there. Now, none of them are named Sin City, even though they have the option and they decided not to. Matt's grunting. I'm sorry, and somewhere Rob's rolling his eyes.
I
But
mean, the thing is, though, Corey, the 8 teams isn't hurting them. It's just the way they play the game. Because, I
but
mean, at one point, Jersey had almost 10 teams, but
we
it's
had 16 one year.
right. The way it's, well, I was talking A7 wise, but,
A7, yeah, that was telling you. Yeah.
but I'm just saying the way you play the game and the depth you have on your team that is going to continue to play the game a certain way is what makes what more effective. Like right now, you got Ole, you got Verardi, you got a couple other guys that are able to rotate throughout the game and keep the same energy. The U has that. The Watchmen had that last year with Nick Mays and um, Freight Train and Wolverine and Sly Washington and all of these other guys, Scriggs. Like you had a rotation. You look at some of these other teams, and it's just like, oh yeah, this one guy is so crazy. I don't know any pass rusher on the night callers. I know about Deontay Henderson, but
Well, the kid Tyree McCants, the kid that used to play at Central Florida, and he was like a slot receiver there, and then he put on some weight. He's a monster, bro.
I
Tyree
didn't.
McCants.
When I
He's
saw him,
Henderson is not. Henderson is 8. This dude's 9.
yeah,
Those two dudes. Yeah.
when I saw them play against the Watchmen, I saw him create some type of pressure, but he wasn't like I don't know how many sacks he had in that game.
Well, I mean, look at the final score. Neither defense really showed
Right,
up,
that's what
and
I'm trying to say. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like the Watchmen got played. Like they made the Nightcrawlers made the Watchmen play their type of game, and I think the Watchmen tried to beat them at their own game instead of playing their game. Like if they didn't adjust their personnel to Bagway's speed, they just kept playing the way that they've been playing all year instead of making those adjustments. The same way I feel like the Nightcrawlers didn't adjust to RTC the same way. Like once the Insomniacs made a commitment that we're going to run this ball, I don't think the Nightcrawlers ever really adjusted.
well, and that kind of touches into another common conversation that we have on the 3-on-1 podcast, and it's interesting because you fit that role, right? So when we talk about the Watchmen in comparison to a team like, for instance, let's just say, I don't know, the Paterson U, when we talk about the Watchmen, the guy who runs their team and whatever, right? We don't have to go into the specifics of it. Would you say that he is the guy that's on the field kind of helping the players make the adjustments, or he's just there to, I don't know, fill in the blank? I don't know what he
I don't want to
does.
discredit him because I don't know what he does. I did see they had like a coaching staff. It was like 3 or 4 guys over there with Watchmen shirts on, and I don't know what their main job is. I know offensively, John and Ace, I mean,
Right,
not Ace, Lord Jesus. John and Buck pretty much called their own shots because
right.
I've seen them run the same offense for so many years to the point where I can tell when something is Buck oriented and when
Right.
something is Ace oriented. But defensively, I can't really say who does what. I know Wolverine is vocal, but his philosophy is different from Sly, who I've seen with the Gators. So that's why I said having that mesh, it was no consistency in the game, right? Because it was kept changing and changing with each personnel group.
And so when you look at those two teams, right, and the two games that you mentioned, where if using your acumen, using your, kind of understanding of this league and ways to kind of address those things in game, is that one of the things that you think may have kind of turned the tide in both of those games? An eye on the sideline, because to be clear, Coach James B, man, I always get
Burgoyne.
I always get brave enough to say it, and then I know that I'm going to butcher it, so I might as well. Coach James B, that's just who you are. For the Insomniacs, he actually mentioned this, that when he watched the Watchmen film against the Nightcrawlers, that the Watchmen didn't make the adjustments in game because they had the low football IQ. Now, because I wanted to argue with him, I was talking about the IQ on the other side of the ball, in which the offensive, uh, you know, game plan for the Watchmen seemed to work every single drive except for one. But I do think that that's really interesting that you specifically bring it up as you look at it as somebody who makes those adjustments for your own team. Watchmen with the guy who runs that team, Nightcrawlers, which kind of just go out there and just ball out. Do you think that in the 3-on-1 greater conversation of having a guy that's calling the shots, a manager, coach, whatever you want to call that role, is that what those teams were missing to kind of the finishing piece to a championship for both of those rosters based on the results?
Yeah, I would say that in a way, and it's not to like kind of toot my own horn, but I do feel like the Nightcrawlers lost back-to-back years because they have no running game. They literally throw the ball 95% of the time. And the
Right.
one time they did try to run a toss in the red zone, the
It turned
running
into
back
a
tried
pass
to
play anyway.
yeah, the running back tried to turn it around and pitch it back to Bagway. So that helped the Insomniacs because they already knew that the Nightcrawlers were one-dimensional. Second, they iced out Rico Brown. Rico Brown caught the first touchdown of the game, if I'm not mistaken. And
The
after
big the
that,
big play from
Yeah, he
Logo.
got that first pass.
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
it was a huge
And that
play.
was
Logo
and
caught the hook and
and
scored. Yeah.
after that pass, if you watch the rest of that game, Rico did absolutely nothing. I might have seen one of the best press cover corners I've ever seen.
Danye Lyons.
He did a hell of a job. And
Yeah, he's
if
playing
you
pro flag now. He's
if you
good.
see me play this, if you watch this podcast, that is the best coverage I've seen in some years.
Yeah,
press man across the board.
I
He
would agree.
never let him, and it made Logo become the only weapon for Bagway for the whole game. And I mean, Logo delivered, but
Boo hoo.
in this game, because it's 7-on-7 and it's not 11-on-11, you have to find the one thing that you're able to live with, that you have to say, yo, if I'm gonna lose because of this, then I'm cool with it, but I'm gonna try to stop everything else. And that's what the Insomniacs did. They said, okay, cool. This little pitch back thing that Logo and Bagway is doing, which is very innovative, by the way. And Logo just rolls out into this little wheel route out the backfield, and
Hmm.
we're gonna live with that. But everything else, we're gonna stop. Rico, you're finished. The Logo, this is gonna take 5 seconds for you to do. So by that time, we hope we got some pressure on Bagway, and I mean, they wore them down as the game went along to the point where they were able for them to just lose track, get sloppy, and they took advantage of it. And I mean, that's why they lost. Like, and I think the Watchmen never had anybody to say, okay, you know what, Train, it might be better if you just go to nose. It might be better if I don't know, Slide Washington get a little bit faster than Beefy. How about you go to DN? How about we get faster across the board? Hey, Sean Grove, we know you're a good safety. How about you come play linebacker? Like, they just didn't adjust to the speed of the game, and it just got away from them. I mean, that happens. It happened to us.
Yeah.
Like, it just happens.
Well, famously, your counterpart in for your guys' rival, Kenny Stansbury, in an obviously different situation, he says that if he was in the situation that Big Mike is in for the Snow Tribe, he wins the championship week one. And we all know what he's specifically talking about, and it's green. But for you, looking at the Watchmen last year in the situation that they were in, if you're on that sideline, a member of that team, guiding them, at least on the defensive side of the ball, do you feel like you bring that team to a championship?
I don't want to answer that because I don't want to discredit Marcus.
Yeah, you're a good dude. All right,
But
so
what I will what I will say is I definitely would have done things differently, and some of them is what I just said.
yeah, you just
But
literally said it, and I think that making that move. Let's be clear. You watched the game. I don't know how much you could have done against Mark Bagway that would have changed how well he was playing in that game. With guys, crushing him, rolling out to his left side, he's a right-handed quarterback. He was still able to throw dimes 60 yards down the field. Um, at a certain point, it's like, no matter what we do, it's not working. Just ask the Insomniacs for most of the 3.5 quarters of that game, how it went against a guy like Mark Bagway playing at that top level. But as we look at the Florida division, we talk about the Vegas division. We know what's going on, and there is still growth going on. Shout outs and rest it for a couple minutes in peace to Boston. But we have Indy, California's expanding, Ohio's getting bigger. Around this time last year, the conversation that Rob was having was that, he's doing the rule of three thing, which I kind of was really into and I almost like fell in love with. And then I don't know where it is now.
it died with Florida.
That's what I'm saying. But what he said is that, and I don't think he was 100% wrong, but what he said is that he felt like Florida was next because of all the things that we were hearing from Florida, things that we physically, with our own eyes saw with Florida against the Rare Breed in that playoff game. Florida was next. Vegas was, and I think it was 3 to 5 years away. And then the conversation, blah, 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 blah. We were talking about, in the same breath, I think he was saying that the U is washed, but I don't want to rehash anything that you're upset about.
Oh yeah, no, I was here for that.
I
Rob
know.
He's not here today. Y'all gotta
No,
have him back when Rob's
he
here.
said that you're probably super, and I'm being sarcastic. He said that you're super happy with him, and you're probably not at all upset at anything that he's ever said. But in that same kind of like framing, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, the league shocks us year after year, whether it's the specific champion or the championship itself and how great it is, or whatever. Year after year, 10 years straight running, A7FL surprises us. And Rob was right in a way that he said Florida was coming. And pause, whatever. But they came and they conquered and then they made it. And, I think the depth.
Yo,
Yes,
I'm only
Ayo.
joking. I'm only
Shout
joking.
outs. No, shout outs to a former player of yours, Ayo. But Vegas, Vegas kind of cut short that timeline. They said, all right, Rob, hold my poker chips, cashed in. They're standing there holding the trophy. What do you think is the next evolution nationally of the league? Where do you see things going? Where do you see the ups? Where do you see the downs? What's as we look at the whole huge picture? What's your prediction for the future nationally as we close out the first decade, head into the second decade of this beautiful league?
I think Vegas keeps expanding. I think Derek's doing a wonderful job. This is the most credit I'm ever gonna give him. Uh, I think that they're running the division the way that it should be. It gives me uh Jersey Town Beef vibes. Like I think they find a way to keep expanding. I think some of those guys playing national flag can bring more awareness to their league, and I think it can help them. I mean, because everybody's not gonna make the national flag league. Like let's just be 100% honest with that. But this is better than any of the other leagues to me. So at the end of the day, I feel like I think that they can prove themselves to be more diverse. But I think once the Insomniacs lose, I don't know how much longer they're going to say, okay, we lost, but let's stay together. Because as you can see, what happened with the Nightcrawlers almost, or what did happen with the Watchmen, you know, losing changes things. And
Yes.
it makes people feel like, oh, well, we lost because you couldn't get out your own ego. And then that just drives people apart. I mean, you got Trey Robinson coming over here. You might see logo over there. They might feel like the logo experiment, if it doesn't result in a back-to-back championship, they could feel like, hey, this is a waste of our time and this is a bad idea. You didn't believe in us. You didn't feel like we could have won, so you had to go get a guy from Florida to come all the way over here. Like, it's so many different narratives that happen, and there's probably already players that feel like, hey, I want to go somewhere else, but respectfully, because we won last year, I want to run it back just because, but I already know I'm losing. That happens all over the league.
What do you think if the Insomniacs, let's say they handle their business, and I'm not going to say what the national result is, but let's say they handle their business and they take care of business the way that they have been out in the West. Of the other teams, who do you think is the closest to competing with them to be the top dog in the West?
I mean, sick with it. I mean, they just had a good fall game.
Does that fall game do more to build the confidence of Sick with it that they can take down Big Brother? Or does it put Insomniacs on notice that they can't just roll out of their Vegas hotel room and show up to a game and beat anybody?
I feel like Sick with it to Insomniacs is giving UIC, BICU vibes.
Thank you. That's what I
think,
said, Rob, and you choked down my fucking throat.
I
Pause.
think it gives those vibes, but once again, it took BIC to get a completely different quarterback than Nemeth. It took BIC to get better defensively and have a couple calls go their way to change the narrative in 2016. And
You
then
guys will never let that go, and rightfully so. I think it's a catch, but you guys will never let that go.
And then because we were goaded if we three-peat.
Bro,
we're goated now.
it was a fucking catch.
Goated.
It was a fucking catch.
It's easily the easiest catch call ever. Anyway.
No, I mean, it didn't get called a catch. It didn't get called a catch, just like Des Bryant's catch didn't get called a catch. But
I think also
it's a fucking catch.
I think even with the reloading, and this is not bashing BIC, but for a long time after that 2016, they had to reinvent themselves with you, and then they came back and then they reinvented themselves again with Sterry. And I think them having two close games with us in 2021 made them feel like in 2022, yo, we're just a variety away from being able to really beat them. And they did. It gave them the confidence. After that first game, it was like, yo, we can beat them. Because at that point, we had beat Ashanti 3 in a row. And Ashanti and Sterry have never lost to anybody but you in this entire league, West or East Coast.
Still. Yes, still.
So, like,
And
it's just one of them things where you got to feel like, okay, this might have been our chance. Like, we had them on the ropes, okay, we did some things wrong in the second half, but we had these guys right where we wanted them. Pause. And that Insomniac sick with their fall championships. And now they feel like, okay, come spring, we kind of figuring it out. We're adjusting to their speed. We're adjusting to RTC. We're adjusting to all of these things. One bad play, one turnover, go our way. We might fuck around and win this shit.
And Ryan, before we get out of here, what, as a fan of the league, and obviously you love hearing me and Cory alongside Rob Fabian on not only the podcast, but during the games, obviously you wouldn't want anything else but that. But when it comes to the games of the week this year, as a fan, what are some of the matchups you're looking forward to seeing, not only on the sidelines getting ready or after your games at Asbury Park Stadium, but maybe when you get home, sitting on the recliner, watching it on Caffeine or on the A7FL YouTube channel?
I want to see Renegade Snow Tribe. There's a little talking over the last 2 weeks. So I want to see that.
I'm not even talking either. That's what's
I
fun
want
about it.
I want to see I want to see Watchmen BIC again, only because, like I said, Ashanti and Sterry haven't lost to anybody in this league as a tandem except for the U. And I want to see if the Watchmen can do it. I mean, I know we got the Watchmen week 1, which I plan on that being a loss for them, of course. So I want to see how they're able to bounce back, come through that adversity, and possibly finally knock BIC off. And I don't know when Insomniac's play sick with it, but I'll be looking forward to that game.
It's like week 5, right?
And I'm looking
Yeah, it's
forward
week
to
5.
DC Buzz playing, period.
Watchmen, yeah.
I want to see that. I want to see.
Yeah, I want to see the Watchmen play each other. That's gonna be a fun game.
I got some surprises for y'all that you'll probably find out about in about a week or whenever I feel like letting y'all know. But you'll see it. And you'll probably remember I said this, and I'm sorry, I'm not sorry, but I'm not losing.
That's what's up. Taking
And
yourself,
there's no better way
taking-
to end that.
And then
Go ahead, Cory. Ask that.
Yeah.
You can't end the podcast on anything other than that, though. But ask your question, Cory.
no, I'm gonna end it terribly. You're gonna hate it, but I'm gonna love. I love myself, so I'm just gonna do it. But I want to leave you with this, and you could take yourself out of it. You don't have to, because we just heard what you just said. And before Matt asked his question, I wanted to ask this, but whether you want to be, whether you want to take yourself out of it or you want to be part of it, who's your favorite to win the championship in 2024?
The U. That's it.
You got. I dropped, right?
Yeah.
Am I back?
I said the U. That's it.
All right. So, all right, fine, good, because I think that learning what you guys learned about yourselves last year and the game plan that you need to win, and then adding that consistent passing element, obviously, I think you guys have made the adjustment that you needed. Just like when Rob was talking about offensive line play after the 2022 season, 2023, what'd you guys do? One of the most dominant offensive lines in the league easily. And shout outs to the Insomniacs, who are probably the main competition there. So take the U out of it. Who's the favorite going into the 2024 season other than you guys?
I mean, the favorite is the champs.
So Insomniacs are other than the U, Insomniacs you feel like are going into this league the team to beat. This season the team to beat.
I mean, they're the champs. I'm going to give them that level of respect. However,
Fair.
Once again, I just did tell you, Sterry and Ashanti haven't lost to anybody that's not the U.
Well, if you guys weren't in it, right?
If we weren't in it,
who wins? This is what I'm saying. BIC plays Insomniacs because you guys just are goated and you don't even have to play for the chip. This is for second and third. Insomniacs, BIC, neutral field, everyone's healthy, everyone shows up. What happens?
Okay, before I give this answer, they're going to say I contradicted myself. But being the favorite doesn't mean that if you just so happen to play somebody, you may lose. I think on a neutral field, BIC versus the Insomniacs, I think BIC wins by at least 2 touchdowns.
Well, unfortunately, we might not get to see it, but everybody knows that we want to. Ryan, thanks for your State of the U address. I think there's been nothing more presidential in this offseason, maybe even in the country recently, than you coming on our show, classing it up, and having a great football conversation. First of all, thank you for telling your guys not to murder me Sunday. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I do know for a fact that you almost told them not to do it to make it worse for me week 2, which I will accept. But as always, man, as a friend, as a foe, as just a good dude, thanks for coming on. Great to have this conversation. And shout outs to and always remembrance to Block Talk and Pat Coburn, Smoke, even though you weren't on my top 7. Just always know that you are number 1 in my hearts.
Tell Big Rob I'm looking for him.
It's not hard to find. You'll be able to see him.
All right, man. I appreciate that.
On that note, thank you so much, Ryan Shamar. For our guest, Ryan Shamar, for Cory Hammond, I'm Matt Ryan, saying thank you as always, and please, for the love of God, don't be an asshole.
And I see you. And in my kitchen, I'll tell you,
Yo,
I'll try.